Our stories are the most valuable gifts we can give the world. They can inspire and help others face the challenges they're going through in their lives because we lived through ours and have wisdom to share. Recently, I published the personal history of Dennis Nichols, a 400-page, glossy, hardbound book with a premium color interior that captures the stories and pictures of his life, from where it all began, through his childhood, time in the military, and raising his family, including the hardships and miracles that are ever present. Personal histories for our family and posterity are the most important books we can publish, and it's where my publishing career began. I initially founded Triumph Press to preserve my journaling and have been blessed with the opportunity to publish the miracles and blessings of my parents. Today on Triumph Talks, we will be meeting Dennis Nichols and learning more about his book. Welcome to Triumph Talks, Dennis. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you in person. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. I've really been looking forward to it. Speaking of my parents, I have their book right here over my shoulder, and you are sitting in their living room. So it's been wonderful. And I thank my parents for helping out so much.
But I know your parents personally.
Yeah, they introduced us, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. I actually got to meet you last April when I came out to visit my parents, and I did a little workshop about preserving your legacies. So let me begin with the first question, and that is what inspired you to write this book?
46 years ago, my first wife, who's since passed away, she gave me a journal and encouraged me to start writing, which I did. And I wrote a lot of stories for several years. One day I realized little changes needed to be made. And that's a nuisance. So I transfer all that information onto a computer. That was really probably a smart thing for me to do. My kids wanted me to do a video because my hands are here. I see that. I cannot talk without doing crazy stuff. And my kids think that's pretty funny. I don't know that it is, but anyway, that's who I am. And they want me to do a video, but I realized that that's not going to work. I'd have a 45-hour video. And so I never was interested in doing that really. But what really got my attention to put this into a book after collecting all these stories for 46 years was this. And it happened this year after you and I met. A really good friend sent me his hardback biography of his life. And about a month later, he passed away. That really got my attention. I'm going to put this together now. I'm 80 years old.
None of us have any promises really, and I'm glad that you decided not to wait any longer. And you sure have a lot of content.
A lot of things happen in my life, and I'm a storyteller.
Well, let's move to the next question because this is where we're going to start hearing some of those stories. And that question is what do you hope that people, and I will add on your children and posterity, will take from reading your book?
I thought about this a little bit, and that is, my kids know me. Uh, my grandchildren think they know me, and my great grandchildren, what they think of me is I'm another grandpa. I'm just a lot older. So, I got to thinking about that. But what really got me was you go through your histories of your ancestors, and there's websites where you can find some of this information, and it's really fun. And every time I've read any of them, I wish there was more. It's like, wow, why didn't they write more? It's really cool to hear about these uh, great grandparents, great great grandparents, and so forth. Have a real brief story about a third great grandfather. Just these are really awesome things. And then the other thing is our lives are really full of miracles, and we don't realize that unless we've written our stories out. And then, like mine, I went back and looked. I didn't think about it, but I looked back on it and went, "Boy, my life was full of a lot of miracles." And so, I believe every single person has those, and they don't even realize it until they collect them and then go back and look at them. So that's the thing that I guess got me.
Well, you did a beautiful job of, like I said, you've captured your life from where it first began, which is kind of citing your parents' backgrounds through your childhood and the rest of your life. And you have miracles, you have stories of you call them your 9 lives, although there's 13 of them. Is
That's
that
true.
right? 13?
That is
Yeah.
true.
Which is also the title of the book, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Where you got the title, but I'd love you to just take a little time now to share some of the stories. I thought it would be neat. We have 4 sections in your book, so let me just introduce the section, And then if you'll share some of the stories from it, we'll kind of move through that way and get to just learn a little more about you and just see what kind of stories you had to capture. And of course, we're creating a video for your family to actually get to see you tell some of your stories. So let's begin with childhood.
This first story I thought would be really fun to share with you is kind of a crazy story. It tells you a little bit about my personality. Was really kind of an interesting one. It involved my cousin, who I'm still close to this day. We're about the same age. Happened when we were probably 14. He's driving his dad's car. Uh, he doesn't have a driver's license, but his dad trusted him. But we'd only drive around town, so just a little tiny town where we live. I learned when I was 12 that there was a guy in town that was about 40 years old. He's a little bit crazy, sort of. That's the best way to explain it. And he was just going nuts. And I didn't know this, but I was on an event, and this guy calls out, "Parley wants a cracker." And oh man, I cannot believe what happened. And that got me going. And so I became a really bad person for a while. So I want to share this story because this isn't nice. I told my cousin Ross, who didn't know anything about this, and we're both about 14. And I says, "Hey, we need to go by Parley's house and I'll holler out Parley wants a cracker. It'll be a blast. It'll make him so mad and he'll chase us and, we'll get away and everything will be good." Well, when we get up there, the house is all dark. I'm not even sure if he's home. I have Ross pull up a ways in a car, and I go up to the door and I sneak up to the door. "Parley wants a cracker." I took off running, and I did not know he saw the car pull up. So he was suspecting something was up, and he was right by the door. And he opened that door as soon as I hollered out, "Paul." I don't even know if I got the cracker out of my mouth. And I took off running as fast as I could, and I hollered at Ross, "Start the car! Start the car! Start the car!" And which he did. I jumped in the car, hit the lock, and when I hit that lock, Parley was already there, pounding on the door, pounding on the window, just trying to get in. And Ross takes off as fast as he can. Now, what I'm going to share with you now is kind of why I want to tell this story. Ross had been taught, even though he's only 14, his dad says, whenever you park the car, put the emergency brake on, which he did. But in this hurry, he forgot to take off the emergency brake and stepping on the gas, going as fast as he can, off we go. My home is about a little less than a mile away. I told Ross, when you get past my house, because Parley's going to be going back in his car, he's going to be chasing us. So when we get back there to my house, I'm going to bail out, go slow enough I can bail out, and you head for your house, which was, well, basically the next house down the road and about another quarter mile away. Anyway, we do this, and as soon as I get out of the car, I holler to Ross, "Stop, stop, stop." And I ran in the garage because Ross's back right tire was on fire. And I get out there and I can't get our fire extinguisher to work. I cannot try. And I finally tell Ross, "Just go, get home," because I could see the lights coming down the road. Parley's headed our direction. He's going to know it's me. I'm going to run in the garage and hide. You get out of here. And I asked Ross about that story years later. Ross can't even remember it. I'm like, "What?" He can't even remember that story.
I can't believe you didn't remember that. Ugh. And I'm glad you brought up that story because you actually have multiple times that you taunted Parley in your story, and and it was like a almost like a intentional cat and mouse game where you knew that you'd get this reaction, and then if you don't mind, I want to jump you ahead though, because later in life you later were assigned by the church to visit him, and you had never really established a relationship with him, and so it was an awkward experience for you at first. I wonder if you just share some of that.
Sure. Um, this story does have a fairly good ending. One thing I never did ever say was my father had always warned me, "Dennis, he was crazy when we were young," because he was about the age of my father. And he says,
Mm,
"Dennis, leave this guy alone, please." One time he even chased me clear into the house, and my dad saved me, or I'd have been a dead man. But anyway, I
yeah.
don't think
No,
I
I
even
think
know.
that's an important detail to include, to understand it was scary enough to drive and get the tire on fire. But it was actually something you did because it created adrenaline. He was much older, and so there was that fear. So
Yes.
later in life, you were assigned to go and minister to him. Share how that went.
I was an elders quorum president, and my one of my counselors was a prison correctional officer, tough, rough guy. I mean, he was. I loved Russ. He was so awesome. But anyway, he took his responsibility way, way, way good. Okay, and we had 6 months straight of home teaching, which is really quite a feat in the LDS church. I mean, that doesn't happen often. 6 months straight. He's going to go on vacation. With this vacation, he says, Dennis, do whatever you do. I want 7 months home, 100% home teaching. Do not fail me. Do not. You got this? Yeah, yeah, Russ, it's okay. It's okay. We'll be all right. No problem. So anyway, he goes on. He keeps warning me, do not. So the last day of the month, I discover one family has not been visited. And you guessed it already, partly. Well, I'm faced with this dilemma, and I'm like, okay, get on the phone. And I'm calling people, and I'm calling people, and I'm calling people, and nobody has time to go see Parley. I don't know if they didn't have time or no one was going to go see him, but I do know nobody would see Parley. Nobody. So I decided, okay, Dennis, do you go see your enemy number one, or do you face your your counselor in the elders quorum presidency? Now, Russ is somebody you do not want to face. Trust me. And I could tell stories about him, and I have none in my book, but I could tell you stories about Russ. He's quite a guy, but don't mess with Russ. That's the bottom line. So I decide, okay, I'm going to go see Parley, and I show up his door. I'm just shaking, because I'm an old man now. I'm like, I don't remember. I'm 25 or 6 years old, I think. And I I'm knocking on his door. This is the first time in my life, honestly, ever, that I did not holler, "Parley wants a cracker," and run. I'm standing there knocking and waiting for the answer, almost in a way, maybe hoping that he wasn't home. And well, I tried to get the 100% Russ. Anyway, Anita, his wife, answers the door. Hi, Anita. Parley home? Yes. So she escorts me into the kitchen, and there I sit down and have a nice little chat with Parley. And the first thing I have to tell Parley is, "Look, Parley, I apologize." And I did apologize. And it was a sincere apology because I realized how stupid I'd been. I now know the responsibility in the church where I really shouldn't be this kind of a person. It was a great experience for me. What ended up happening, and I can end this real quickly, is we became really good friends. And I realized that, dang, Dennis, when you were 12, 13, 14 years old, why didn't you stand up with your friends and say, look, this isn't right, and be good for Parley? It's getting me a little emotional thinking about it because I should have done that. I could have changed his life. I know I could have. Anyway, I get a job, I transfer away, and I get this. I find out that Parley's passed away. Vicky and I are living in Las Vegas. And if I had found out about it, I would have driven to Bluffdale to be at that funeral. I would have, and I was really sorry. I really was sorry I missed that.
That was a very moving story in your book, and like I said, you share that what you told in the childhood section, and then you circle back to it later on, and give us that experience and what you learned. It's just passing on the wisdom, and what I love about that too is you are authentic and you're sharing all of your muddy horse pucky literal
Yeah.
throwing mud, but even just the metaphorical mud of your life, you're sharing it and you're teaching what you learned from it. And like I said at the beginning, our stories are so valuable because we can help others, and we don't help others necessarily by having lived these perfect lives and just passing on all of these pristine ideal stories. And I think sometimes we feel like maybe that's what we should preserve, or just the perfect, the ones we're proud of, right? And to me, it was you tell that story early on in your book, and I just thought, wow, I was so impressed that you continue to share, like I said, all the flaws as well as all the miracles, and that's what makes it real. And I just think that story is so amazing. So I'm glad that you shared it. You have another one from your childhood that you wanted to talk about. Is that right?
When I was 15 years old, I'm working on a farm full time, and I bought a 41 Chevy car, and my parents didn't know about it. Okay. And we would hide it. The farm was a big farm, and not even the two brothers who owned the farm really knew about this car initially. And because we would go hide it in different places. And when I say we, there was the three of us young men, the same age, good friends. We were really good friends. In fact, Dick is my best friend still to this day. We're in communication with each other all the time. And this story is about him and I and one other friend. But in this car, we had gone off to the point of the mountain, and I won't explain all that, but those that know me know where point of the mountain is. We come driving off the point of the mountain chasing jackrabbits, and it was really fun. And my friend Dick was driving. I was a passenger in my own car, and we had a suicide knob. That's a little knob that makes so you can turn the steering wheel easier. And my wife calls it the knicker knob, so you can kiss and hug your girlfriend while you're driving your car. I've never heard that before, but anyway, to me it's a suicide knob. Anyway, turning that steering wheel, and we're turning the steering wheel, and we're doing all these kinds of fun things, and boy, the car doesn't tip over. It was amazing. I mean, I could not believe what would happen. So we that next morning we tell our buddy Dave Hat, and Dave, you got to go with us. This car is so much fun. You can't tip it over. We're going to go up off this hill, and we're going to chase some jackrabbits, and we're going to have a blast. And what we didn't realize was when Dick and I had done it, it was late in the evening, and the ground is better, and in the morning it's frosty, cool, hard. Okay, we didn't think about that. We come flying off the hill first thing, and the first jackrabbit we see turns that steering wheel. He's driving, by the way. I'm in the back seat, and it's only a two-door. And these two guys are strapped in. And by the way, these are the first seat belts ever in the world because Dick invented them, really. They were military belts, okay? And military belts have a little hinge that's tight. It holds up against you. You got to suck your tongue in if you want to loosen the belt to get out of it. That's important for me to tell you because on that first turn, we rolled this car, okay? And I'm the only one that's injured. Gas is pouring out of the tank of the car, and I'm yelling at Dick, "Hey, turn off the motor," because I can see the gas leaking, and I'm laid out on my, we're on the top of the car, okay, upside down, wheels are up in the air, and I'm laid out flat. And our friend Dave is right in front of me, and he's like, "We can't get him to talk." Dick, we think he's dead. We thought we killed him.
Oh, yeah.
Finally, he says, "My legs are cut off. My legs are cut off." I'm like, "Oh man, what are we gonna tell Ida?" Ida's his mom. Okay, don't mess with Ida. All right. But anyway, I'm like, oh man, he's gonna be dead before we get him out of here.
What a scene. Oh,
That scared me. And so I jumped up. I'm in the back seat, no place I can go because I'm trapped. But I jumped up, and then Dave just goes into shock almost. But what it was, he was looking at my legs. He's, he's hanging upside down, but he's looking at my legs, thinking of his legs. Okay.
thinking your
All
legs
this.
over there are his legs that are cut off.
We didn't know this at the time until after we got out, but the story's almost over. But what happens is Dave and Dick has got to get out of these seat belts. They're hanging upside down and they can't get out no matter what they do. So Dick gets out his pocket knife, thank goodness. And I remember hearing this because I can't see nothing. I can only hear ouch, ouch, oh, ouch. This Dick trying to cut his seatbelt off. Okay. And Dave hits his head, and Dick does the same thing. They hit their head on the top. We roll the window down. Dick rolls the window down, which is actually up, because you're upside down. Okay. And for some reason, that window wasn't broke. After all this stuff, that window was still
That's
there.
amazing.
He rolls it up. He sticks his head out, and the window, I don't know how I did this, but it rolled back down on his head. And so he's stuck. So I had to reach under between the two seats, reach up, grab the steering, the thing, and Dick could get out, and then Dave could get out, and then they had to reach their hand up and hold it open so that I could get out. We walked home to the farm, got the tractor, came back, rolled the truck over, or the Chevy over, got it back down to the farm, and we cut all the body off completely, and we turned it into a rail. And that vehicle continued to go forever. And I won't tell you the rest of that story, but
There's
back
you have to
back
read the book because it's in the
yeah,
book. Yeah. You've
yeah.
got a lot of and again, you just have so many stories like that, just unbelievable. Like talking about water skiing from somebody driving the car, I think it was, and just it's incredible that the adventures that you created growing up on a farm and that you've captured in this book. It's so fun to read. I think that the viewers are getting a feel for that right now, just what kind of stories you have to tell. So let's move to the next section, and that one is titled Life with Vicky. Vicky is your
Yes.
wife, your first wife, and the mother of your children. And so, share some of the stories from that section of your book.
This is one of my life where I'm lucky to be alive, literally. We're in Salt Lake City. I work for Sears Roebuck and Company. We're on a break with a really good friend of mine. We're still good friends. We send Christmas cards back and forth to each other every year. And Clyde and I are in the restaurant there, Nelson's Cafe, right next to Sears Roebuck, downtown Salt Lake City on State Street. And we're right up front. And this guy walks in and he pokes a gun in my ribs and he says, "Get in the back kitchen." And I looked down at the gun, I looked back up at him, and I thought, "Guy's mentally ill." You know, I thought he had a toy gun. And we keep talking, me and my buddy, we keep talking. And Clyde doesn't know what's going on because he doesn't see the gun. The gun's stuck in my rib cage here. And pretty soon he jabs me again. And I'm like, "You moron," you know. I, I couldn't believe it. This guy's really messed up mentally, you know. And he says, get in the back room now." I'm like, "I'm not listening to you, you goofball. I got this 38 caliber pistol in my rib, but I still think it's a toy gun." And I keep talking to my buddy. And the third time, he is really upset and he jabs me really hard. And now I'm going to get up and I'm going to hit him because I'm like, this is, I know you're mental, but you know, this is too much. And my buddy saved my life in a way right here because he jumps up and he starts going in the kitchen. I'm like, maybe I better do the same. So I get up, I go in the kitchen, and the other two customers that were in there. No, there was three customers in there, and then there was two employees, the cook and the restaurant gal. They're already in there with another guy holding a sawed-off shotgun. It had a 22 on the bottom and a shotgun on the top, which was kind of a weird looking thing. It was sawed off. I remember that. And he had us all line up, and he told him, he says, "All right, you keep your eye on these guys, get all their wallets, and we're going to keep one of them because if they turn us in, we're going to come back and kill that guy." And he said, "I'm going to go get the till." So the guy with a 38, he's obviously the boss. He goes in there. And the guy with the over and under shotgun, I'm right in the middle, two on each side of me. Well, I don't know how many. I was right in the middle, dead center. I'm the only one with short hair. My buddy has longer hair. Everybody's, they just back in the time when everybody had longer hair. And I think that's what it was. I don't really know, but he looked at me and he says, "I don't like your looks." And I remember my brain thinking, "Well, I don't like your look. I don't think you're so hot yourself." He aimed that shotgun at me. He cocks the hammer. I'm like, okay. And my brain's thinking something that's impossible. My brain's thinking if I see that trigger finger move in the slightest little bit, I really did. I'm thinking this. If that trigger moves in the slightest little bit, I'm going to hit the ground. I'm going to beat that bullet, before it gets me. I'm going to be down there. Well, if you really think about it, that was impossible because a sawed-off shotgun isn't going to be a blast hole like this that close. It's going to be like this. So it's going to get the two guys on the side of me too, probably a little bit, but it's going to just tear me to pieces. But I didn't know that. That's what I'm thinking. And right when all this is going on, the guy with the 38 walks in because he's got the cash. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm going to kill this guy." He says, "What are you going to do that for?" He says, "I don't like his looks." And he says, "That's a stupid reason to kill him." He says, "I don't care." He says, "Your gun's going to make too much noise." He looks at him and he can't believe this. He's got the shotgun in this hand, and with this hand, he's got his hand on his buddy with a 38. "Give me your gun. Give me your gun. Give me your gun." And they're fighting over this gun. God, I couldn't believe it. Finally, the guy gets away from him. He says, "Look, just leave him alone." And they turn around and they look at us and they say, uh, "We're going to leave here and we're going to be watching this front door. And if you come out of there, we're going to shoot you. So don't anybody move." Well, while this conversation is going on, I happen to notice a claw hammer on the side of the kitchen there, right by where they're talking. I can see it there. And my brain's just going 100 miles an hour. And I'm thinking, if I time this right, by the time I figure how long it takes them to get to the front door, I got to do this before they get to the front door. I'm going to grab that claw hammer and I'll just throw it as hard as I can. I'm going to hit that guy that wanted to shoot me in the back of the head. I got this all planned out. And you know how your brain goes, you're going to move. It's just, you do stuff. Well, my brain went, go get that uh, claw hammer. And it must have been about right here. It was supposed to be here, a billionth of a second. And I'm going for it. And that guy walks back in the kitchen. He was standing right around the door, just waiting for one of us to move, just waiting. And I just froze in place. He took a step back and he shot that shotgun into the kitchen. BBs flying everywhere. He shot it kind of into the ceiling area there. Anyway, BBs everywhere. The kid next to me hit the ground. I thought they'd killed him. When it was all said and done, uh, every single person had gone. They were scurrying around. They were doing stuff. They were gathering their wallet. The guy who was supposedly so brave twice, remember, twice, is still standing there. I haven't moved. I was the last one to actually move. I was just petrified. My youngest son was 7 days old. And so I had realized that I wasn't going to see him anymore. We just got him home from the hospital 4 days before. And so when I went home, I told my wife, I am so glad to see you. She looked at me and I put her arm around. I am really glad to see you. She thought I was really weird. And I did it again. I said, and I, as sincere as I could possibly be, I didn't think I would ever going to see you again. And she was like, what is going on? And then I shared the story with Vicky.
That is quite a story. And I think that's one of the 13 nine lives or
That
nine
is.
life stories. And I'll point out in your book, you did something really neat. I loved it. You in the table of contents, every story that's one of these that you almost died, we put it in red. And then when you're actually in the book, when you get to the subheading, your book is divided into 4 sections. And then within the sections, you have all these subtitles. And whenever it's one of those stories, the subtitle is also red. So they really stand out. And you have had quite a few of them. I think your next story is also one of them, isn't it?
Well, let's see. I wrote down a couple of things here, and
Yeah.
yes, the next one is. Uh,
A little different though, not someone trying to kill you, maybe nature trying to kill you.
this one I really, 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 truly should have died, and I don't know why I didn't in this one. But Dick Bell, you've heard me talk about my buddy Dick. Him and I, we were scout leaders. Well, when I say scout leader, 14-year-old scouts. So I don't remember what you call them now, but they're not Boy Scouts, but that next Explorer Scouts, I think. Anyway,
Yeah.
we taught these boys how to make their own kayak out of wood frames, and then you wrapped them with canvas, and then you painted it 2 or 3 times so that it was waterproof. And it was really fun. And our church house had a basement, and we'd be down in the basement, and the boys were building them at home, but we'd teach them in the basement how to uh, row with a single oar, not the double paddle, but a single. So I was
Mhm.
teaching these kids how to do that because this was in the wintertime. Well, when we were getting ready to do the spring runoff, and it's kind of like whitewater rapids, but these whitewater rapids were going to be worse than you've ever seen. Okay. And we're going to go down the Jordan River, and it's going to be a blast. Now, we're pretty dumb back then, probably pretty dumb still, but we had these 5 boys, no life jackets. Dick has no life jacket. I have no life jacket. What we were thinking, I don't know, but we weren't thinking about anything about that. I mean, never entered our mind. So we get to the Jordan River, and this happens once a year where there's so much water coming down out of the mountains up in Utah, and some years are different than others, and this was one of the highest years ever. Just so it was perfect for us. What ends up happening is when we get to the Jordan Dam, there's a dam that diverts to different canals and the Jordan River. So you got all these different diversions going on, but and they back up the water so that it can go to these different diversions. Well, with this water runoff, they were trying to get the canals as full as possible to get rid of all this water. And so they had the Jordan River closed off as much as they could so they could do this. But it still was so much water volume. Jordan River was unbelievable. I've never seen this much water. Well, there's a little 3-foot channel in this where the water was coming over the top of the dam, and I says, "I'm gonna show you kids how you can steer with this single kayak paddle, so you know what you've learned in the church, and that you're gonna be comfortable in doing what we're talking about here. And I'll prove to you that you can steer, and I'm gonna go down off that and fly down off there, and I'll be in the Jordan River, and then you guys, follow behind me." And so but you're not going to do that. You're going to get in below the dam. I don't want you above here because this is going to be a real challenge. So I get out there and I start paddling, and the current is so violent. I had no idea. Even me, with all the experience I had, I could not control that kayak. And the kayak went, and I missed that 3-foot thing, and it slammed me into the dam. The dam has two huge concave metal uh, I don't know. That's the dam, I guess. And with it being concave like it is, with the water volume, as soon as I hit that side, I dove inside my kayak, tipped over, tipped on its side, and all these boulders and rocks and just tons of stuff was flying through there. I ended up losing my glasses. I lost my wedding ring. We found out about that later. And I should have actually stayed right in the concave part because of the water pressure and the concave part of the pressure, a miracle that that thing kept going down and allowed me to go to the bottom. There was only about a foot, just barely enough room for that kayak to fly through. And I'll never forget this. I'm holding my breath, getting beat to death, and all at once, I took off 100 miles an hour. And I'm underwater, of course, and holding my breath. And I just remember that just speed. And pretty soon it was a little more calm, and I was upside down. Didn't really understand all this was going on at the time, but I'm upside down, stuck in my kayak. I can't get out because all these boards are broke. And what saved my life was my wife said the worst way to die in the world is to drown. Now that's not true, but I didn't know that, and I believed her. And I thought, man, I cannot drown. Now, I don't want to go through this. If I had known differently, I probably would have just taken a breath and let it happen. But I just fought like crazy. And I remember when I came up, my buddy Dick was like 3 feet away from me. His eyeballs got this big around because he wasn't expecting to see me, and I wasn't expecting to see him. We got the boat to the side, or we got me to the side. The boys ran downstream and collected it. I don't know how they got it, but they managed to collect that thing. Got me another my oar. They found all that, and I said, "Okay, we're gonna finish this trip." And my boat's all rickety and stuff. It's just leaking, but that don't matter. We're not gonna go too far. We get in there. I said, "Now follow me, and if you hear me yelling and screaming at all, please, please get out of the water. Get out of the water now. I don't want any of you getting hurt." Okay. So we go down the river, and I hear this really loud noise. I don't know what it is, and I come around by the train trestle, and I have never seen waves so high in my whole life. And so I start screaming for these kids to get out. And I hadn't even hit it yet, but it was so loud and so violent, they couldn't hear a word I said. I didn't know that till later. I got through that horrible experience, came around the corner, and there's a tree right in the middle. And I saw that tree coming. I'm trying to get out of the way, and my boat wrapped all the way around, snapped just perfectly right in the middle. And I climbed up the tree. And the boys come by one. I just tell them, stay that way, stay that way, stay that way, so they wouldn't hit this. And anyway, my buddy Dick got down there and doing the same kind of thing. They all get out, come along the side, and I'm still hanging on to the tree. And they said, come to the shore, we'll rescue you. And it's only like, I don't know, 20 feet. It wasn't like a long ways. And I'm like, I'm a little nervous. And so when I hit the water, I'm already paddling as fast as I can. So when I jumped out of the tree, and my hands were, I hit the water, and I went about 100 yards. Just flew down there. The boys are running as fast as they can. Dick's running as fast as they can to catch up to me, and they got me out of the river. A couple weeks later, after the river runoff was done and the river's back down to its normal, Dick and I say, "Why don't we go back and see if we can find your kayak?" We went up there, and the kayak was the main stream of the river was 30 feet from where the kayak was, and my kayak was 15 feet up the tree, still stuck, wrapped around the tree.
That is incredible. Many stories of survival. So I'm going to move to the next section, and this one is actually titled Life with K. So we titled the sections. So Life with Vicky really was all of these life experiences with your children and your family, and then your Vicky passed away, and you met Kay and got married. So you can talk about that a little bit if you'd like, and then I know you have a story that you've picked from that section of your book to share as well. So if you
The one I would like to tell is I'm dating Kay and I've decided to marry her, but I haven't told her yet. Okay, and I made up my mind, and it took me like once I decided that she's the girl for me. It took me 3 more months to I don't know if it's get the courage or if it's to find the right opportunity. So uh, anyway, that's another story all of itself. But uh, we were being invited to go on a trip called Little Hole in the Rock, and I want to share this because it's the longest story in my history, and it's really a long story. It's 15 pages long, and it goes into a lot of detail because so much happened on this one. It's not a near death experience, even though there was some times I thought I would die, but I was fine. But it's not one of those stories. But as soon as we got home, I wrote this story, and so that's why I think it's so long. It had so much information. There's so many things that happened on this particular story. In fact, the story was so bad that while we were on the trip, I told my friends, "If we make it back," and I meant that, "if we make it back, I'm going to kiss that trailer." Which honestly I did when it was over. I really did do that because this trip was so incredible. There was the leader was supposed to be a 92-year-old guy who's been in there a dozen times. He knows it backwards, inside out. But at the last minute, his wife got really sick and he couldn't go. So he asked his brother to take us in there. And we knew Ralph a little bit. Ralph leads us into this ride, and there's several machines there. Uh, my son ended up going with me, and
So for
but
the viewers that don't know the story, you're going out in the wilds of southern Utah to visit a place where the pioneers had to go down this really steep area. And what were you all traveling in? It was Razor side by sides or Jeeps or a mix of vehicles.
ironically, each one of us had razors. Okay, Polaris
Okay.
razors, an all-terrain vehicle,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah, just so those who are listening that don't know can kind of picture what you're doing as
All
you're
right,
heading
that's
out. Yeah.
the terrain. I really should have said this because Hole in the Rock is really, really famous. It's about 56 miles from Escalante. It's an
Okay.
incredible place. And if you've never been there, boy, you need to go there. You need to put that on your bucket list. It is an amazing, just unbelievable that 83 wagons and 250 people, pioneers from 1879, went down that. It's a 2,000-foot cliff. Now it's only about 1,700 because 300 more feet is underwater in Lake Powell. The last 7 miles, I think you've got to have a four-wheel drive, so you can't just go driving in there in your family car,
Right.
But
Yeah.
but anyway, you go to there, and it's an amazing place. You cannot believe that a person can walk up and down that, and I've done that. I've been in Lake Powell and gone up. Buoy 66 is where it's located, and you can climb up it, and it's treacherous. And they did this. Now, when you get across the other side, that you would think is impossible. It can't be done, but they did it. But it only took them a week. Well,
Yeah, and
they were supposed
they had used horses and ropes to just lower them. I actually went to Brigham Young University, and when I was in grad school, there was someone who was doing his doctorate on Hole in the Rock, and he had written the stories, and he had these little round balls that were he called them Moki balls. I don't know if you saw them, but he said they somehow um, erosion had created all these. They were like marbles that were stuck to the ground, but if you stepped on them, they broke off. So not only were they lowering him down this steep section, they had all these like marble like balls that were stepping on too. It's just so yeah. I loved reading your story, and I'll point out that you actually have lots of pictures from this trip in your book as well. It kind of helps bring it to life.
Gerald Lund actually wrote a book called Undaunted, and
Mm,
he does a good, excellent job about talking about this experience
good
of them.
story. Yeah.
We had all these meetings before we got into this. A once in a life opportunity. We need to do this. This trek that was supposed to take 6 weeks for the pioneers took them 6 months, and on that trek there was two babies born. Only one animal died, and it was the last. He only had a couple miles to go, and the animal would have made it. But I've climbed up on foot that San Juan Hill, and I'm here to tell you, I have no idea how they got 83 wagons up there. I went up there by myself, maybe maybe a halfway, maybe. And I turned around and came back down. I was exhausted, exhausted. How did they do that? I had a third great grandfather that was, well, he was a little younger than me, and a second great uncle that was on this, and their families went on this trip. And I did not know that at the time. I didn't. I found that out later, and then I was like, wow, I cannot believe this. But on the trip, one of the machines that was a 1000 was a one oh, there was one that was a Yamaha. I forgot about that. There was a Yamaha machine that they had rented. Where we got this one hill we're trying to get up, and he cannot get up it to save him. He cannot get up it. He's going and going and going. He's just fighting it like crazy, and he can't get up. Everybody's gone up but me and him at this point. And he finally says, "Take a break, Dennis. You do it." I had the smallest machine. I only had a 570. He's got a 1000. They were really concerned about me because I had this little tiny machine. They were worried that I may not make it. So uh, I thought, I'm not going up that thing. I'm going to go up from a different angle, same kind of cliff, but a little different angle. I didn't like what was happening. And I got up there fine, which really surprised me. Petrifying, but surprised me. In the end, that vehicle ended up breaking his axle, the rear axle. So their trip was over. So we had a meeting, and the meeting was maybe should we turn around and go back, or should we continue on? And our vote was, this is a true story. Our vote was, all of us said, let's go back. And one of the guys said, Jerry Turner, he says, well, we didn't hear from our leader and we didn't give him a vote. He says, well, he's outnumbered. And our leader says, well, you've come this far. We've planned this trip. It's a once in a lifetime trip. We need to go forward. And I'll never forget, Jerry said, now remember, we've had a vote and we're going back home. And Jerry says, our leader spoke. We're going forward. So everybody takes off. And it's just me and my son. And my son turns to me, and I should say this during the ride several times. And I say this in my story. I'm the father, but in this story, my son is more of the father and I'm more of the son because uh, Randy's constantly talking me into doing stuff and going forward. I'm thinking about, I'm out of here. I've had it. But he said, what are you going to do, Dad? I said, I don't know. He says, well, you better make up your mind because these guys are going. And if I'm going to go, I'm not going to know where to go because it's very difficult to follow the trails there. Anyway, I went ahead and went forward. Uh, Paul and Sue had this 4-seater and they could not get up this rock. The only ones that couldn't get up this rock for nothing. And so finally they said, let's go around on this other side of the ledge and we'll have you come up that way. And when I saw what they were doing, I was like, oh man, any mistake at all, they're done. I mean, if they don't continue the power of the vehicle and they come back off the hill, they're gone. If they slide off the hill, of course, they're gone. Any mistake whatsoever, they're toast. And I knew this, and I watched them, and their tires go off the ground when they get to the top, and they make it, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, it's my turn. I want to go where the other guys went. I mean, if you goof up, you might get hurt a little, but you're not going to die. So that's what I want. No, 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 Dennis, not on your machine. You got to go where Paul went. No. Yes, that's where you're going. So I go over there, I line up, and I realize I have no room for a mistake, none. And this little 570, it better have the power because if I stop or if I try to back for anything, back off for any reason, I'm done. And we would slide off that cliff, and I don't know how we would live through something like that, let alone get rescued if we were alive. So I'm watching up there, and the leader, he's trying to tell me to do this, but Pete Peterson, fortunately for me, Pete was up there, and he would tell me to be line my tires up here. I listen to Pete because Pete's been in construction. He's driven all this big equipment. He knows his stuff. He's really a smart guy. I give him lots of credit for being a really smart guy. And so I line up with Pete. I'm ignoring our leader. I'm lining up with Pete, and off we go. And they got pictures of us, and you cannot believe how high those tires went off the ground when we hit the top. It's funny, we didn't go all the way over, but we went up and we landed, just fine. One other quick trip. We're going down off a steep hill that I cannot believe we're doing this. I mean, I cannot believe this. And it's so steep that when you're looking out the highest point of your windshield, you cannot see the guys down at the bottom. That's how steep it is. So picture that in your mind. And Sue is sliding down on her butt, going down off this hill. And we get next to her and we say, "Hey, Sue, how come you didn't go with Paul? He left me." And we're thinking she's scared to death. She's not going to ride with Paul. As it turns out, he did leave her. Yeah, that's another story. But that's funny. But we got down off there and we didn't get hurt or anything, which really surprised me. On the way back home, that hill caused me to lose a lot of sleep that night. We camped out, it was cold, and we were at Navajo Mountain. We could the next day we could actually see little hole or the hole in the rock, the original hole in the rock, way, way in the distance. We were on the opposite side looking up that valley where they came up, and you can see all these marks. The marks are still there from those wagons. Took pictures of it. It was really fun. But my sleep that night was lost because I kept thinking this 570 will never make it up that hill. Never. And so here I am with this brand new machine, and I'm going to either have to hire a helicopter to get it out of there, or I'm just going to have to abandon it. And I'm like, man, hate the thoughts of that, but I'm pretty sure one of those two events are going to take place. Well, when we get there, to my shock, everybody's gone but Pete, who's behind me, and I feel glad that he's there just in case I have a problem. But Randy and I, we went right up that thing. I was shocked.
So your last section of your book is just fun facts from your life, and there's a lot of different lists and interesting things that you've collected. And for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question, though, because I really want to talk about your title and your cover. How did you come up with the title? It's very significant, and if you'll just share a little bit about the cover art.
Okay, I will. And thanks to you, I kept that because I kept changing my mind, as you would remember. But what happened was, is when Vicki and I had our first date was the 13th of May in 1961, and it became her lucky number. And I didn't know that in the beginning, but I found out. And in time, I liked that idea, so it became my lucky number, our lucky number. When I finished this book, during my life, my friends would always say, "Boy, you've lived 9 lives." They would say all these kind of things, and rather it was 3 or 4, 6. They never knew. It was just that I had all these life experiences that near dying, and so they would always joke about that. When I was putting the final steps of this book together, I realized I had 13 of them, and I was like, "Wow." To me, that became this has got to be the title 13, our lucky number. You and I were chatting one day, and which was a great experience for me, by the way. Thank you. And you said, I noticed something that Vicky had died on the 13th. And I said, yes, she did. And it was in the 13th year of this century. And you said, wow, that's great. Well, after we hung up that day, I know, but you were thinking about the title, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
See, I started thinking about that. I did after we hung up, and I can't remember if we were texting or if we were talking. I remember thinking, you know, maybe I should just call the book 13 and drop the R lucky number. I did, and you remember that. I think
Yeah,
you remember that because
yeah,
you then came back with an amazing explanation of why that's my lucky number. And I hadn't really thought about that. Honestly, here I am, an old man. My wife died a long time ago now. It's been over 11 years. And uh, I'm realizing I, she was lucky. I was lucky. She went through all this suffering, all this pain, all these problems. And now she's relieved of that. She's
mhm,
lucky. So
yeah,
when you explained all that to me, I went, yeah, there's no question now. The book should be
yeah.
called 13, our lucky number. And so that's really what it arrived at.
I'll point out from that, actually, she had passed away on the 13th of November, 2013, and we were working on your book in November this year, and
Oh, happy
I had
birthday.
noticed that that was the date because I'd been working on it, and so I had taken, it wasn't the picture on the cover, but another picture of you and her, and I enhanced it, and I texted it to you on her death date. And I pointed out that it was the 13th, and that's kinda where the conversation started,
That you're right.
and,
That's where
Yeah, that so it was actually stemming from I was actually surprised that you didn't realize that she had died on a 13th. Like you said, I didn't ever realize that. And then you kind of thought, well, maybe that means I should change the subtitle. But honestly, I feel that God gives us signs, personal signs in so many ways. And to even just to have her pass away on the 13th of 2013 was just to me that's just more God showing that he's in charge. He's in our lives too. And I just so I just feel like your title just became that much more significant. And of course the picture on the cover. Do you want to describe the what's in that picture? It's beautiful.
That the front cover picture is a vacation Vicki and I took up into Alaska, and that happens to be Mendenhall Glacier. And
Mm.
I will share this with you. When Vicki died, I wanted to have a picture on her headstone, okay? But I wanted it to be both of us. And sometimes we don't realize this, but sometimes we take a lot of pictures of our wife, and they take a lot of pictures of us, but we don't have a lot of pictures together sometimes. It's really funny how that is. But, you don't have hundreds of those, you have hundreds of the others. So I went through and I picked out 3 pictures to choose from to put on her headstone. And I gave my kids each a vote, and they all voted on the picture that's on her headstone. It wasn't my choice.
Mm.
Okay. My choice is the one you see on this book because
Aw.
they didn't get a vote on this. So
Yeah, this is your
I get, I get to win. I win.
there's another argument for writing and publishing your book and doing it yourself
Yes.
rather than not doing it and having your posterity go back into your journal and try to put it together because they're just not going to be able to put in the details or pick the cover. And that's actually the perfect segue to my last question for you, which is what advice do you have for aspiring authors, in particular people who are interested in preserving their personal history the way that you did?
I had to decide because Kay and I had talked about this a lot. Her and I have a lot of great experiences, and I have a lot of stories about her in the book too. Well, not a lot, but there's a few. And one of them is one of my life threatening experiences too. But in there, had to decide, okay, what do I want to do? And she said, Dennis, you can do this yourself. You've done all the work, you've done all this stuff. I've edited it for you, meaning, I'm not a really good speller. I can do this myself. I had come and I visited with you at that, I'm not sure what we called that meeting we had at the church in April.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was a workshop, a
it was a workshop. Thank you.
legacies
And
workshop.
and that really stood out of my mind. Okay, that was on my mind a lot. And so I discussed this with Kay, and she says, "Well, Dennis, you can save a lot of money if you just do this yourself." Blah blah blah. The book's ready to go. I got all this stuff, and I decided I'm going to call Kent, who's your dad, because I know
Mhm.
him. Says Kent, um, I got
There
some
he is.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, there they are. But
The
I
young
didn't know
man.
him. Uh, I get a hold of Kent, and I said, "How do I get a hold of your daughter?" And so he shared that with me, which is how we got in touch with each other. You called me, had a nice conversation. You didn't know this, but I was making notes like crazy. I had a page and a half. Okay, I was really thinking about this. I writing all these notes, going as fast as I can. All this stuff, the price, all these things I'm going through, and I hang up, and then I talked to Kay, and she said, "Dennis, I think that's a good idea, but your book's okay. You can do this. Just take it out of the printer, print it up, and for $20 or whatever for each book, you'll have
Collate
it."
it.
But I'm thinking about it, and it took about one day, and I says, "Kay, I've thought about this, and I think it would be worth it because I've got all these stories. It's my whole life. I want to have someone who's an expert who knows what they're doing help me put this book together. I think no matter what this price, it's worth it." And so I'm going to do it. I made that decision. So I did. It should speak volumes for you. Okay. Here's what happened. Uh, on our first communications, and you're sharing with me because now you have my book. I sent you to the thumb drive or whatever, however you do that, to send it to you. You start coming up with these suggestions, and every time you and I communicated, and I mean this sincerely, 100% of the time, I would tell Kay, "Man, am I glad I am using Melanie." And I mean that, Melanie. I'm not just trying to say this, I'm saying it sincerely. I was like, wow, what a dumb thing that would have been for me to just put my book together, save some money. Well, what would you do that for? if there's any way at all, to hire a Melanie, man, there should be no question. But honestly, that happened every single day. You would talk to me about some certain pictures in the book, and you'd say you can enhance them, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm saying that. I'm like, yeah, sure, okay. Well, you did. I'm like, how did that happen? For example, and it's not a great picture in there, but my dog Smokey. I could have taken pictures when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, but I never did. Never. But my father had an 8 millimeter camera, and just this last year, I went down and had them all edited onto a thumb drive. Okay, because you can't watch them on that old screen. It's very difficult. So I did that for all of our family. Well, I saw my dog, and so while it's scrolling, okay, while I'm taking these pictures, it's 1 second at a time. If you've ever done that, know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about. I have the phone. I hurried up and took a picture of Smokey. All right. That picture then I sent to you. Now it's a real grainy picture, but you did such a great job of it. I was like, man, now if you understood what I went through to get that picture, okay. So
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know the backstory for that. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
things like that would amazing.
there's so many stories in life. There's so many relationships in life. And my parents' book is half the size of yours. Of course, we're doing volume 2, or it would have been the same size as yours.
I was like, hey, that's
You
great.
know, and even at 400 pages, there's so much more. Let me just encourage you. These books are hardback, premium, glossy, color interior. These books are not very expensive on Amazon once we upload them.
Yeah, I was
It is,
shocked.
I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of it in this show, but I just want people to know that I help people publish commercial books. And I'm just now transitioning, having done my parents' book and now your book, into really wanting to help people with their personal histories and make them beautiful, put your pictures in. They're designed like magazines, but at the end of the day, even if you were to have used some of the standard publishers that are out there for a hardback book for personal history, where you get one picture and a story and one picture and a story in color, the book price per book would have been probably at least 4 times, at least what we're paying for the Amazon book. There's just something about their business structure that allows these books to be printed so beautiful and really in the long run, the selection you made to go that route, your print cost per book is so much more affordable than it would have been to do it any other way. Your upfront cost is a little higher because we're laying it out, we're prepping files. But once it's on Amazon, you have so much potential for saving money and shipping, shipping it out to everybody. So,
What I've learned from you, what you said is totally true. I
yeah.
completely agree, really. And if you have anybody that has any doubts, have them call me.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
we need to do this.
Here's your number and put it on the screen. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, call me. I'll tell them, hey, Melanie, she's the one. Seriously, and
Well, I want everybody to know I did not like say, come in and talk about me. That there was no conversation at all. That was completely organic from you. But I do appreciate the opportunity, though, to have your testimonial and to encourage people to follow your example because I'm on a mission. I really am. I published my first books really in dealing with my own tragedy. My company is Triumph Press, takes some tragedy for triumph and the death of my daughter, but which gave me the purpose. And that's the reason why I do what I do. And like I said at the very start, this is the greatest gift you have to the world. It's the greatest gift you can give your family. And if you have something so valuable, why not put it together? We have the technology, make it beautiful, make it lasting. And it's really honestly the direction I hope that my company will go in. I'd like to do a lot more of this kind of publishing because I just get inspired and literally, I think God speaks through me sometimes when I'm working with you to just kind of
yes,
say, hey, you know what? She passed away on the 13th, so I could show you that I was involved in her time to graduate and come back to me. So anyway.
very
Well,
good.
Dennis, it has been such a joy to work with you. And I thank you so much for allowing me to read all your stories and put your book together. And thank you for coming on the show and sharing your stories. It's been great.
Thank you very much, Melanie. I really appreciate it. And your mom and dad brag about you. They were right on.
Aw,
We put that in the book
okay.
video. I
I'll
know you're
keep
going to
it.
say, I'm going to edit that out.
All right, I'll keep it. Well, thank you, Dennis.
Yep. See you now.